as I was like getting started in music videos is kind of when like music videos as a format was dying. So like initially, like
Yeah.
when we got in, like, Madonna was like a $3 million music video, and like, the Dillinger Escape Plan videos, they were like 40 grand, like, so you could
Yeah.
really do a lot. Like we cast like their faces and like made these old like vintage kind of Westworld like computer like or robot like dummies,
Yeah.
and it was cool. And then, but like as like I started getting kind of more busy in music videos, like because I was directing and doing all the visual like aspects and special effects, and I actually kind of started losing money, so I stopped. I just stopped doing them.
This is Tom for Ghost Cult, and I'm delighted to be joined by guitarist, vocalist, visual artist Josh Graham. You may know him from such powerful bands as Neurosis, Battle of Mice, Red Sparrows, and others. And his latest project, Guiltless, well, in fact, have just released their debut album, Teeth to Sky, on Neurot. So, Josh, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's awesome.
So I feel like probably when it comes to guiltless, the word apocalyptic is going to get overused, but I'm going to use it anyway. Um, I think for me, like when I think of apocalyptic music, it's kind of like the two benchmarks for me have been Neurosis and Killing Joke. And
Yeah.
obviously you had your time with Neurosis. And yeah, I really appreciate the fact that you've got this kind of sense in the album of kind of like the world is burning, and it's not that I want the world to burn, but it's kind of cool to have that intensity on record. So I understand that you kind of grew up getting into some of the same bands that I really like Neurosis and Swans and
Mhm.
Godflesh. Like I kind of got to sort of heavy music late in my musical development, and those ended like Swans and Neurosis kind of ended up being what I sort of considered to be the height of intensity. So like what was your sort of musical upbringing in terms of you getting into the kind of music that sort of informed what you're making now with Guiltless?
Um, yeah, it was a journey, I think, as well. Kind of had like a in junior high, I think, started like really kind of branching out. But it was interesting because it was kind of like punk, like Black Flag was like a big thing, and then on the other side, like Joy Division and like early Cure stuff. And it was like this weird kind of like simultaneous thing. And then actually Dan, who's in Guiltless, as the second guitar player, we started playing together when we were 15. So like we both kind of came from that, and like he was into like more adolescence and stuff. And so like we kind of started like each other like at a really young age, and then kind of got into like ministry and like industrial. We had a pretty successful Phoenix band for a while when we were really young. And then like Rorschach and the like I think Dan bought the it's one of the really early Neurosis 7 inches, with shit the one of the LA like serial killers on the cover of it. Ramirez.
Oh, so was that like even was that before Pain of Mind came out?
I think it might be right after Pain of Mind. I'm not totally sure. And then I saw like Neurosis was touring Enemy of the Sun, and they were
Mm.
playing with Crash Worship, and that was the first time I saw like either one of those bands, and that was a pretty crazy concert. I was just like, oh shit, like it is like totally apocalyptic and like the visuals and everything, and yeah, it's interesting because kind of just went, like that was an awesome show, and like was also seeing like a lot of Melvins and concerts and stuff like that. And that was probably 93, 94. And then like eventually just wound up in a road like directly like working with those guys, which was
Yeah.
which was crazy. Yeah.
When did the visual side of things start for you? Because I understand that when you're in Neurosis, if I've got this right, you were doing the visuals. Like you were you like a straight replacement for Pete Inc? Was that how you came into the band?
Initially, like I started doing in '98, like I started doing motion design, like for more like kind of news stations and stuff. And then in LA, I was working with motion design firms. Imaginary Forces is like a big company now that does a lot of title sequences, and Neurosis started like releasing kind of like old bootleg videos, and I just kind of reached out to them, was like, hey, like I've been a fan for a while, if you guys need any sort of like visual help, I'd be into it. And then So initially, like it was for the Sovereign release. They're like, oh, we want to try to maybe add like a different layer of visuals with Pete. And then I was like, okay, we think we were like, kind of trying to figure it out. And then yeah, Pete just like left, and then they're kind of like, okay, well, I think the show was in like 2 months or something. They're like, can you get enough stuff together to actually do the projections like on your own? I was
Mm.
like also working full time for these design firms, and was like, oh shit, okay. So just like threw all this stuff together, and we had like I made a bunch of 3D stuff. We had a bunch of like time lapse cloud footage, and we got like a camera for an oscilloscope, and like which was running through the soundboard, and so like all of a sudden, like yeah, I was doing the visuals, and it just kind of like morphed into me actually like being like in the band as like the visual artist. So it was cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the first time that I saw them was when you were in the band. It was, I guess, actually you, when did you say that you officially joined them and you started doing shows with them? What year was that?
2000, we it was we whatever that Sovereign release party
Yeah, like
would have.
around about 2000. Okay, so I
Yeah.
think when I saw them the first time, that was sort of towards the end of your time with them. I think it was the end of 2010 in London,
Oh,
and
okay.
it was amazing. I remember the music itself was really intense, and I'd loved Neurosis for years, so I'd wanted to see them. But the visual side as well that you brought to it just kind of created this whole, multi-sensory aspect to it that was
Awesome.
great. And
Thanks.
so I noticed that there's you've got this video on the latest album, One Is Two, was really, really cool. And I think you put that together, right? So have
Yeah.
you been involved in making other music videos? I'm not sure, like with some of your other bands, like Red Sparrows, if you've also done music videos for them.
Yeah, I started Red Sparrows, we had visuals. And then first A Storm of Light had pretty heavy visuals, and and as far as music videos, like I was pretty active like in the early 2000s. I did two videos for Dillinger Escape Plan, video
Ah,
for ISIS. Like I was repped by a few different places for music videos, but it was kind of as I was like getting started in music videos is kind of when like music videos as a format was dying. So like initially, like
yeah,
when we got in, like Madonna was like a $3 million music video, and like the Dillinger Escape Plan videos, they were like 40 grand, like so you could
yeah.
really do a lot. Like we cast like their faces and like made these old like vintage kind of Westworld like computer like or robot like dummies,
Yeah.
and it was cool. And then but like as like I started getting kind of more busy in music videos, like because I was directing and doing all the visual like aspects and special effects, and I actually kind of started losing money, so I stopped. I just stopped doing them, but I still do them on occasion. So yeah, we did the Guiltless One Is Two video, and I actually am putting a video together for Steve Von Till for his record that is
Oh,
coming
cool.
out. So
Nice.
that is much more kind of like abstract and cinematic, but
Yeah.
we shot it a few weeks ago in Idaho, and I think it's coming out like April 10th or something. So
Nice. And
yeah.
so like this, I'm no expert when it comes to the visual media and video side of things, but I really love some of the sort of layering and effects that you've got going on this Guiltless video. Are these kind of techniques that you were sort of using with Neurosis? And so like with Red Sparrows and A Storm of Light, you were playing with backdrops like with Neurosis. Is that what you're
Yeah,
doing? Yeah.
yeah.
So like with this latest video, are you using some of these techniques? Are there sort of different techniques that you're using to get those kind of like the layering and the way that the lights are all sort of like trailing, like it's kind of it's psychedelic in a very dark way, but I guess when you were doing the visuals for Neurosis, they were also kind of psychedelic in a very terrifying way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I think at this point, yeah, after doing like that kind of content for so long, I have like a bag of tricks for sure.
Yeah.
And it's even there's some of the footage in there that I've kind of had on my computer for like 10 years. And we strangely enough I did a bunch of content for like Jay-Z and Drake, and, that stuff is in there too. Like it's a lot of like night vision footage of like firefights in Iraq, like with like military stuff. That's like a lot of the green that is in there is from that.
Mm.
And yeah, it's just kind of like layering stuff and like using it's called like luma mats, where like you're using the light or the dark values to like show another footage, a piece of footage through that. So like you can kind of like where like you think you're looking at like our faces, but like you're actually what you're seeing behind it is like a riot. So
Yeah.
it's kind of yeah, it's fun. That one is too like I initially thought it was going to be a simpler process. Like I wasn't planning on it being like a fully just kind of crazy uh more like visuals like experience, but I wasn't super happy with the footage that we got, and that was just because like we were kind of pressed for time and budget and like trying to not like blow a bunch of money on it because
Yeah.
we already spent a bunch of money on making the record. So
Yeah. And having had that experience before of where the visual side of things wasn't necessarily making you money, you didn't want to dig yourself into a hole.
yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like yeah, I spent more time on the back end of it, but I had just kind of like an off time like outside of work. So
Yeah. On the musical side of things with the latest record, so I think I saw in the press release you there was some quotes from you and you were saying that you'd approach the album a bit differently to the EP that you had last year and you wanted it to be more of a collaborative effort with you and the other guys in the band. And I think that's something that really shines through in some of the
cool.
tracks, particularly like Our Serpentine Circle. Like I think that might be my favorite track on the
Oh,
album. I love the interplay that you've got. There's lots of really cool drum rhythms that are going on in the album, and I like the way that they sort of play off the guitars.
yeah.
There's also like I think you've got some interesting things going on with like some kind of they seem to me anyway like kind of tricky rhythms. Like on in Starless Rain, I feel like the time signature's not doing anything weird, but there's something about the rhythms of it that feel kind of odd. Is that sort of stuff? Does that just come out naturally, or are you sort of consciously like thinking about how you're going to do the timing for these things, or as well like the title track, there's definitely some weird time signature stuff that's going on there
Yeah.
which I can't quite figure out. So like how much of that stuff is intuitive versus being sort of kind of strictly planned?
Like I mean, rhythmically, like Billy is like writing everything, and like we sort of all kind of like program like some ideas and like send them to him, just as like an initial sort of like thought, and then but I'm not a drummer, and like I what I write is super basic, but like that's like 'cause Billy is like he was also in the Storm of Light and plays in Generation of Vipers and he's like one of the most fluid and like drummers I think that I've ever played with. Like he's got like a real like kind of John Bonham kind of natural vibe. But like for this band, he wanted to like almost swing it into like more of like like the Godflesh, like where he is programming drums. So I
Mm.
think it's like a really interesting like he hit like a really interesting like middle ground with his sort of natural like innate like groove like that he finds versus like a kind of like more industrial thing. And so I think he's always kind of like looking for like that angle and like in these songs, which is really cool. I think that in Starless Rain and Our Serpent, like he definitely found that pulse. And for Teeth the Sky, that was actually Sasha's song. So like at the end, like Intronaut is like is kind of way over my head as like a player. And I think when Sasha sent his like original demo ideas, I think Dan and I were kind of like, what's happening? And but like we had to it's cool. Like it definitely pushed like our like sort of like more lo-fi approach like versus like Intronaut like very like mathematical approach and kind of like finding and crafting together this like middle ground. Yeah, just like that's kind of like the full collaboration, I think.
So I think you mentioned a bit earlier that you were like sending back and forth ideas between each other. When did you actually first get together as a full band to start playing this music together? Like were you actually recording parts separately or did you record them together in a studio? Because you
No,
recorded with it was with Kurt Ballou, right?
Kurt mixed it. And then Travis Kameyer from Fahrenheit Studios, who's in Generation of Vipers, he recorded the drums, but we tracked everything ourselves. So we were trading files like digitally online. And the probably the most insane thing is that we haven't actually played these songs together in a room yet at all, ever once. We flew to LA, took band photos, mimed the music video for like
Because I
eight
was
hours.
going to say I thought like one is two looks like you're playing together in the studio, but that's just for the
Just
video.
yeah. So even like Dan was like, "We're all going to LA. Like we have to play these songs like for real, I'm just like, dude, we don't have time, like that's like a full day of band photos and a full day of this video. And so yeah, our first show is the 21st with Coalesce in Kowloon Walled City in San Francisco, and we're flying into LA on the 19th, and we're rehearsing on the 20th, and the 21st will be our first show. It's like, I don't know,
Wow.
it's cool. I mean, it's totally absurd, but like obviously we all have like an extensive sort of touring and like band history. So
Yeah.
that's why that's happening. It's certainly not the norm.
Yeah. Just as like a little incidental thing, see, because you've mentioned Generation of Vipers a couple of times. Their most recent album, Guilt Shrine, is amazing. I love that record so much. It's so cool.
Yeah, it is awesome. We're we're probably next week we're announcing we're gonna do like I think it's like 8 to 10 shows with them on the East Coast, in the US, and we're trying to like work out doing some shows together in Europe. I think Guiltless will be over there in October, but it'll be pretty short. So we're trying to like maybe like on the next time, because like Josh is actually from Generation of Vipers actually toured with the Storm of Light on second guitar.
Mm,
So like, and then Travis recorded Nations to Flames, which was one of the Storm of Light records. So like we have this like really great kind of rapport with everyone. So it just makes sense. It's like you can have 6 people on tour, and it's like 2 completely different bands. And so
yeah. Are you would you say for Guiltless that you are the front man? Do you view yourself as that in the band?
I don't really like think of myself like that. I think I'm making the art and like the lyrics and stuff like that. So I think it may be like in singing, but it sort of comes across like that. But I think it's definitely like this record in particular is like a massive like collaboration, which is awesome.
Mm,
Like I instigated 3 songs, Dan instigated 3, and Sasha did 2. So and then I mean there's parts I think that we all wrote like within all of those songs, but like as far as who's bringing it to the table, I think it's certainly not stuff I would have come up with on my own. So I
yeah.
think where like Thorns was basically me. Like I worked on these songs, those 4 songs, to just try to establish like a project that I wanted to work on, and then invited those guys, and then we rounded up the songs together. But that was like my thing when I got in touch with everyone was like, okay, this is like the sound that I'm going for, and these are the songs. But like anything forward from here, like I really want like to work as a group, Like, I
Yeah.
think that was really important.
So you mentioned, I think, that you had been playing in bands since you were about 15, is that right? So have you kind of consistently been playing with bands from all of that time up until now? Because I know that while you're in Neurosis, that was like you had Red Sparrows during that time, you had Battle of Mice, you had what was the one that was like Blood and Time, was it, that you had with a couple of the guys
Oh,
from
yeah, Blood and Time with Scott and Noah, and
yeah.
yeah,
And then obviously like a Storm of Light kind of overlapped with when you're in Neurosis as well. So yeah, did you always have musical projects on the go, more or less?
more or less, yeah. There was from like like 97 to like 2001. I didn't really have anything. I was more concentrating motion design and like kind of like getting that my life like together, because it's something that you can do freelance, and like it affords the ability to kind of tour more. I mean, we're all kind of older now, obviously, so not this band isn't really set up in like a way that we can get in a band for like 5 or 6 weeks. It's just not like, and we're all fine with that. It's so far like the plans that we have together like for this year are like a long weekend, or
Mm,
like 10 days or something like that. And so I think it's a way for us to support the record, get out there, and just we're not like confined to that touring model. So
yeah.
yeah, veered off the answer, but yeah, like so other than I think like that 4 or 5 years, like I've been playing always in some degree, like even if it was projects like in the later 90s where like it was just stuff I was working on that never really turned into anything. So
Mm. And how much have you done vocals outside of Guiltless?
a Storm of Light, and not a lot. Nova Rupta is a band from Sweden where the whole model is like guest vocalists, so it's like almost every song has one, and
Mm.
that it's pretty cool. Like they have 3 or 4 records, and it's like some pretty awesome people on there.
So when you got into doing A Storm of Light, were you consciously thinking that you wanted to sing?
No, it was like Battle of Mice was a super weird, dramatic experience between me and Christmas.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, but I wasn't sure whether that's a bit of a sensitive topic.
Yeah, I mean it's not the best, but like that band like immediately it was like pretty apparent that like it would have been pretty successful, but like it
Yeah, the
was
music was great, but I understand it was a bit of a volatile situation.
yeah, it was a train wreck of a situation. So a Storm of Light was like, okay, like I want to play something heavy, but like I didn't want to deal with like the singer, like a lead singer sort of situation again, because they're really like if you have a lead singer, like that you're like at their whim of if they leave the band, like you're you
Yeah.
know, like you're not that band anymore. So I was like, all right, I'm just gonna do it, step up to the plate and at least kind of eliminate like one kind of like area of questionable like you put all the effort in and then like somebody leaves or whatever. So yeah, so it was definitely a learning curve. I think vocally I got stronger like over the course of that band for sure.
Yeah.
And then like basically kind of like for Guiltless it's like stripped back like less about melody and like more about kind of like a visceral sort of feeling
Yeah.
to to the music.
Like another texture.
Yeah, yeah.
And on that point of different textures, something else I was quite fascinated with was the fact that three of you in the band, basically everyone apart from the drummer, you've all, as well as being credited with guitars and bass, and in your case vocals, you're all credited with noise. And I'm quite fascinated at the moment with the concept of noise and music in general. So I'm kind of wondering for you, like both in terms of what you guys are doing in the band, but for you in general, like what does noise mean to you from a sort of auditory perspective and how you apply it in music?
It's the short answer is it's like an atonal addition to the music that like adds mood or like creates a sort of atmosphere, but isn't reliant on melody. With A Storm of Light, like we had visuals and tons of keyboard stuff that like melodic keyboard lines and piano, and there was always when we played live on a laptop. And then like eventually the visuals were also on the laptop, which is cool because it synced perfectly, but we were kind of like slaves to the computer a little bit. Like if it had any issues, which it did, occasionally, it was
Mm,
it'd be like a train wreck. So the idea for Guiltless was okay, like we all understand like the power like that component can have like in music, but like how do we limit it so that it provides that kind of effect without putting us back into the situation of like having to like have a computer or like so like the conversation was basically like how we would trigger this stuff live and how like stripped how minimal can it be like it's not it I think there's some degree of it on all the songs on Thorns but it's not on every song on Teeth of the Sky and so the
mhm.
way we're doing it for these shows like where Dan and I both have Boss like looper pedals and we have like I'm triggering the segues off of that and then he's triggering some of the in song stuff and then Billy's actually triggering some stuff with like a rolling pad and then all of that stuff goes to like a little mixer that you control so it's the noise like component is like represented live and we're triggering it live and but we don't have to have the computer so it's pretty cool
Yeah.
it's kind of freeing.
If I've kind of got a sense of this right, are you going to be having sort of transitions between the tracks when you're playing live? Are you going to make this all a kind of constant evolution of music rather than sort of having distinct breaks in between tracks?
It's to some degree, yeah. I'm so used to that, especially because of Neurosis and like a Storm of Light, like it very like seldomly like lifted the mood.
Yeah.
Um,
Like I remember when I saw Neurosis, I just noticed there was no kind of like the end of the song going like, thanks guys. It was like, no, you're in the atmosphere the whole time.
yeah, yeah, they like there was no communication with the audience like ever. So I break out of that. I think like most most occasionally like at the end of the set, just like kind of get out of it like because I think it's nice to break it like at a certain point. But
Yeah.
it yeah, it'll be like Gillis is not gonna have visuals because like for the reasons I mentioned, like we're trying to it ends up being so much work. And it's not to say that we won't have them maybe in the future or something like that, but like for right
Yeah.
now, I just like wanted to try to keep it stripped down and like just a bit more of a focus on like the music itself. So, but I'm super nervous about it, frankly. I mean, it's like because I'm used to having like that whole thing, like especially with the Storm of Light where everything was on the computer. So the visuals would change and there would be segue piece with the visuals, and sometimes the segues were like linked up with direct audio. And
So it kind of give you like a bit of a support around the music that you were playing.
yeah, yeah. But I don't know. I mean, there's also, I think with that approach too, like there's a risk that the experience becomes a bit like wallpaper where it's kind of like it's just constant, like
Mm.
you're not getting that break. So I don't know. I'm curious to see like how it goes. I know that like some bands and rightfully so sort of like had issues with bringing like a Storm of Light on tour because it's just a lot to like it's a lot on our side. We're setting up the projector and we're setting up the screen and like it's this big full production and then we're opening for Converge or Sleep or something that like it just goes back to like normal band things. So
Yeah.
and
No,
and I don't.
I was just going to say, like, that kind of makes sense. Like, I was thinking there's a bit of a parallel with comedians, for example. Like, if you've got a comedian that has props and they're going to do a lot visually, and then you've got a comedian afterwards that's just standing there telling jokes,
Yeah,
there's a certain kind of like minimalism that maybe doesn't feel like it has the same impact after having that whole kind of like multi-visual aspect to it.
yeah. So I'm curious, like, yeah, I'm just kind of curious to see like how this works and like how people respond to it. And I think we're trying to still figure out like kind of some sort of visual like aesthetic as far as like
Mm,
I don't think I'd be comfortable just being like, yeah, just leave the lights on and like we're just gonna play. Like I would like some sort of mood, but
yeah.
I mean it's not the focal point. So yeah,
Yeah.
it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I guess, there's something to be said for kind of in one way or another pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and having a certain amount of fear that like,
Yeah.
ooh, I'm heading into uncharted territory.
Yeah, definitely. Because like Red Sparrows had visuals, and it's just like super. I mean, heavily ingrained in my like personal music relationships. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be cool.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of the release of the album, so you've worked quite a lot with Neurot on various different projects over the years. So, I mean, you mentioned that you're going to be doing, I think you said a music video for Steve Von Till. So obviously you're still kind of connected with him. I
Yeah.
don't really know like who actually runs Neurot and like what's your relationship been like working with the label?
Oh, it's Steve. Like Steve runs it essentially. He's not. Uh, they have like label managers right now. Suzanne is running the kind of like day to day of it. And but I mean, it's generally Steve, selecting the releases and the bands, and then yeah, there's just like a very small team of two people at Neurot, and then it really comes down to like Lauren and Rarely Unable like doing press and
Yeah.
Dave from Ear Split doing press. It's cool because Gillis like it was like kind of like coming back home because it had been a while since I like had a release on Neurot, and Neurot like no one wanted to sign Red Sparrows like and Neurot like those guys did it and essentially just because like kind of like out of a favor to me, and then it just ended up being like it took off for a while. So yeah, it's been like great. The choices that they make in releases, I think, are always like very carefully thought out, and that there's going to be like a large amount of like artistic credibility to whatever's
Yeah.
coming out on the label, and it's cool. They don't stay like it's not everything doesn't have to be like grindcore. Everything doesn't have to sound like Neurosis. Like it can be Grails or Steve solo records. There's a lot of great range in it, which is cool because I think that for me, because like my musical tastes are also like really, really varied. So
Mm.
it's nice to be in like company of like a wide array of of artists.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely from the outside, I get a really kind of positive sense from Neurot, both in terms of what you were saying, like about the sort of care and the variety in terms of what they'll put out on the label, but also like just little incidental things. Like I know for a while they've been doing this regular kind of promotion where they have this like pay what you can, and they pick a different release from the catalog and they put it on Bandcamp and people can pay any price. I just think that's really cool. Little nice touches like that kind of
It's
shows that they
awesome.
care and they're thinking about the audience.
Hmm. Yeah, it's that. I love that they do that.
Yeah. So in terms of the release of Teeth to Sky, I think you've got a vinyl release coming out on Neurot. Is that just like it's a straight black vinyl? You're not doing any kind of like spatter or color or anything like that?
No, we were kind of like trying to decide what we wanted to do, and historically like I had put like with a Storm of Light and stuff like I was like pushing for like these crazy gatefold packages with like colored vinyl, and I mean it's awesome, but it costs a lot. Like it costs a lot to make, and like
Yeah.
I really in sort of appreciation for Steve like putting Guiltless out like with Thorns like I just wanted to be like more fiscally responsible and like especially because it's with the first days like the record came out yesterday it seems to be off to like a really great start but like I didn't want to put like undue like pressure on Neurot like because like we're appreciative to get the music out there so yeah
Yeah.
like the idea is like it's stripped down like we're using eco vinyl which is made from all the stuff that they throw out like it's from like the color pellets like it'll be like whatever's left over
Oh, that's
so
very cool. I like that.
yeah so you only have two options which is like these kind of murky spatters that they do because it's basically like the blend of like all these colors or you can do black so we chose black.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like, to your point about having these elaborate designs, like I love vinyl, and I do like having various kind of special edition sets, but I like just having vinyl in any case. Like a plain black vinyl is still really, really cool as far as
Yeah,
I'm concerned. And
yeah, and oh good.
no, 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 it's all good.
Yeah, and I also do like a lot of larger like package designs for Universal Records and
Mm.
do these big sets with like all kinds of stuff in them, tchotchkes and like it feels sort of environmentally questionable on some of the stuff, but I mean they're not making a lot of stuff and but these box sets that are going for like three or four hundred dollars and
Mm.
yeah, so I don't know, like the idea of like less is more is kind of appealing, I think, especially in our modern age.
Yeah. And were you involved with the cover art? That's also very striking, the design that you've got on the cover of the record.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that it's actually my first completely like in 3D cover. It's
Mm.
like that entire thing is modeled, so you can shift the sunlight and move around through it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very
I've been
cool.
using like the program's called Cinema 4D. I've been using it since like 98 or something, but there's a lot of it in motion design is like primarily where it's used, but I like using it in print when I can. Like the Shrine Builder cover has some of that on there, but it's also
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense now that I think about that.
yeah, it's kind of just it's cool. Like, and that program in particular has come a long way, like in the last 10 years with it's a renderer called Redshift, where it's actually bouncing light around. Like, it really creates like something that can look more photoreal, I think, than
Mm.
historically.
Yeah. No, it's very cool, and I feel like it really fits the kind of aesthetic of the music that you've got as well.
Yeah.
It's sort of in a way kind of visceral, a bit mysterious. It's jagged as well. Kind of like fitting in with the name, and yeah, kind of ominous in a
Yeah.
in a sort of
Yeah.
doesn't really give you too much information about why it's ominous, but it's a bit like, hmm.
Yeah, so that the icon I made for the band, the long or the short story is it's related to this concept of nuclear semiotics, where the scientists are trying to figure out how to communicate, like 10,000 years into the future, that like an area of land might be contaminated with nuclear waste, and they're trying to keep people out through the use of like these like menacing earthworks, like I think is the term. So
Oh, that's really interesting.
so the icon is inspired by these like kind of thorn fields, like these massive like concrete structures that they're planning to make. And then so I kind of took that idea and turned it into like a kind of a more of a spray painted logo for Thorns. And then for this one, the influence was these things called spomenics, which are these kind of they're also like really mysterious. These kind of communist, brutalist concrete structures that are in like Bulgaria and Croatia and stuff. They're really cool looking. That's so like as far as like kind of extrapolating like the 2D spray painted logo into like this more like 3D like physical structure, like that was the kind of influence from for that. So the idea is that we will use that icon in like a similar placement probably on every record, but it could be, anything from like the spray painted logo to like the Spomenic style to like a tattoo on somebody or like a spray painted on like something or like so it'll be interesting to see kind of how it progresses, but it's kind of a cool challenge too, like just artistically to be like, okay, well, we want to keep it in this icon in this same placement. But like what can we do like substrates or like perspectives or something.
Yeah, think about like what kind of context you're going to incorporate it into.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's really cool. It reminds me a bit of Einstürzen und Neubauten. Like
Oh,
they've got that album Haus der Liga with the horse on the cover, and they've got the Einstürzen und Neubauten logo in the eye. So I
yeah,
like the way that they've found ways to incorporate that, and you kind of like, oh, like you spot it, you don't necessarily see it straight away.
yeah. Like I that band, like I kind of arrived to them late, like in the game. I remember checking it out like in the mid '90s, and it was a little like kind of I was like, like I get it, but or I like it, but I don't really get it. And then
Yeah.
I think within like the last 10 years, like I just like the earlier records are just like even actually even the new records are great, but like there's a performance of them playing in like a warehouse in Berlin or something in like
I know the one
1980
you're talking about, yeah.
with like where he's playing like the shopping cart and there's
I
like
was just
five
gonna say with the shopping cart, yeah.
that just like that thing like it's so like mind blowing. I mean, and I know that like they were like a big influence on Neurosis as well. So like
Yep. It's
it's
pretty inspiring.
yeah, that video is just like kind of perfection, like in weird, insane art.
I think I got into them through Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. And so
Oh,
like I remember when Blixer Bargeld left the Bad Seeds, I remember at the time thinking like, why the hell would you leave? And then it was kind of at that like I already knew about Einstürzen und Neubauten, but it was only after he left Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds that I really kind of went back and listened to them more. And I went like, oh shit. Like I hadn't
yeah,
realized how amazing Einstürzen und Neubauten are. Like they're incredible. And I've like seen them live as well. And they had when I saw them, one of the percussionists had this giant funnel that he climbed up a set of stairs to get to, and he had these jagged pieces of metal that he was throwing into the funnel.
oh, well,
So it was brilliant. Like I think
man,
they were less kind of industrial in really the kind of like early sense of like that video you were mentioning, but they still incorporated that into the music. They still had that interest in the different kind of found sounds and the tactile things they could use, which again is kind of I think from a musical point of view really inspiring to see that
yeah.
kind of creativity.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's amazing. Actually, I'm doing some soundtrack stuff, and I'm supposed to do like a soundtrack for a friend of mine's film coming up. But my wife and I just found there's these abandoned like military forts. It's called like the Triangle of Death, like near where we live. Like there's three on three different coasts that like aim towards each other, but it's just these long corridors, concrete and like metal, and like I was just banging on stuff, and I mean, it's totally reminiscent of some of the early
Mm.
Neubauten sounds, and I'm gonna go back and record some of that stuff for the soundtrack.
Yeah, that's also very cool. I like that. Yeah. Yeah, I find all this kind of like the cross section between the visuals and the music and the kind of real instruments or like sort of man-made instruments versus the things that you can find. It's all very fascinating, the kind of the magic and the interplay that you can get with these different things.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's truly awesome.
So the album's coming out or the album is out on Neurot, vinyl, CD, people can download it digitally. I know that Neurot's got a North American store and they've also got a European store as well that people can go to in general just for people to pick up the album and for people to follow the band as well, in terms of shows you've got coming up. Like what's the best place for people to go to?
It seems Instagram seems to be the best. Our the handle is Guiltless Band. But we set up a Blue Sky account and so we have Instagram. Facebook seems to be like a slow demise. I don't know.
I get that feeling.
Yeah, and then we have guiltless.band is the website, and then and obviously you can find it on Neurot. And I know
Yeah.
Evil Greed is the European store. Yeah, I think that's everything. It's like a little bit disconcerting to have like your most primary like avenue to reach people be like Meta and
I know, I know.
Mark Zuckerberg. Yeah, it's very disappointing. I think hopefully Blue Sky like takes off, but I don't know. It's just it's a crazy time, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I know some people who've gone over to Blue Sky, and I think I'm probably going to try it out myself as well because yeah, I have similar misgivings about Meta and Zuckerberg and all of
Yeah.
that, and the less said about Twitter, the better. But
Yeah.
but yeah, in any case, Josh, it's been great talking to you. Thank you so much for your time, and
Yeah, thanks.
yeah, Teeth the Sky. I really think it's a great record, and I hope it continues to get a good reception. And yeah, I hope those shows go well too. And
Yeah, thanks.
I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to keeping track of the band.
Hopefully we'll be in the UK in October. So see.
Nice. All right. I will keep my eye out for dates.
Cool. Cool. Awesome.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Josh.
Thanks, Tom.